So we've covered anicca, dukkha, and from Lumpur Cha, and so this will be just a very short reading on anatta from Lumpur Cha, and then after that I will read a bit of a different talk, switching to Lumpur Sumedho. So this is from a question and answer session. I believe it's between I think it's from a monk asking Lumpur Cha a question. Student: some people believe that Buddhism teaches nihilism and wants to destroy the world. Ajahn Chah: it means that their understanding is not complete or mature. They are afraid everything will be finished, that the world will come to an end. They conceive of Dhamma as something empty and nihilistic, so they are disheartened when they hear it. But their way leads to tears. Their way only leads to tears. Have you seen what it's like when people are afraid of emptiness? Householders try to gather possessions and watch over them like rats. Does this protect them from the emptiness of existence? They still end up on the funeral pyre, everything lost to them. But while they are alive, they are trying to hold on to things, every day afraid they will be lost, trying to avoid emptiness. Did they suffer this way? Of course. They really do suffer. It's because of not understanding the real insubstantiality and emptiness of things. Not understanding this, people are not happy. Because people don't look at themselves, they don't really know what's going on in life. How do you stop this delusion? People believe, this is me, this is mine. If you tell them about not self, that nothing is me or mine, they immediately want to argue the point. Even the Buddha, after he attained awakening, felt weary at heart when he considered this. When he was first enlightened, he thought it would be too hard to explain the way to others, but then he realized that such an attitude was mistaken. If we don't teach such people, who will we teach? This is my question, which I used to ask myself at those times I got fed up and didn't want to teach anymore. Who should we teach if we don't teach the deluded? There's really nowhere else to go. When we get fed up and want to run away from others, we are deluded. How about if we aspire to being Pacceka Buddhas, the solitary realizers who attain enlightenment without a teacher and don't teach others? Ajahn Chah: such terms are merely metaphors for your state of mind, but being something is a burden. Don't be anything. Don't be anything at all. Being a Buddha is a burden. Being a Pacceka is a burden. Just don't desire to be. I am Mr. Smith. I am a venerable monk. That way is suffering, believing that you really exist thus. Mr. Smith is merely a convention. Monk is merely a convention. If you believe you really exist, that brings suffering. If there is Mr. Smith, then when someone criticizes him, Mr. Smith gets angry. That's what happens if we hold these things to be real. Mr. Smith gets involved and is ready to fight. If there's no Mr. Smith, then there's no one there, no one to answer the telephone. Ring, ring, nobody picks it up. You don't become anything, no one is being anything, and there is no suffering. If we believe ourselves to be something or someone, then every time the phone rings, we pick it up and get involved. How can we free ourselves of this? We have to look at it clearly and develop wisdom so that there is no Mr. Smith to pick up the telephone. If you are Mr. Smith and you answer the telephone, you will get yourself involved in suffering. So don't be Mr. Smith. Just recognize that these names and titles are on the level of convention. If someone calls you good, don't be that. Don't think, I am good. If someone says you are bad, don't think, I am bad. Don't try to be anything. Know what is taking place, but then don't attach to the knowledge either, thinking, I am someone who is aware. People can't do this. They don't know what it's all about. I like to use the analogy of upstairs and downstairs. When you go down from upstairs, you are downstairs, and you see the downstairs. When you go upstairs again, you see the upstairs. The space in between you don't see. It means Nibbana is not seen. We see the physical form of things, but we don't see the grasping at upstairs and downstairs. That is becoming and birth. We live continually becoming something. The place without becoming is empty. When we try to teach people about the place that is empty, they just say, there's nothing there. Real practice is required for it to be known. We have been relying on becoming, on self-grasping, since the day of our birth. When someone talks about non-self, it's too strange. We can't change our perception so easily. So it's necessary to make the mind see through this practice. And then we can believe it. Oh, it's really true. When people are thinking, this is mine, they feel happy. But when the thing that is mine is lost, then they will cry over it. This is the path for suffering to come about. We can observe this. If there is no mine or me, then we can make use of things while we are living, without attachment to them as being ours. If they are lost or broken, that is simply natural. We don't see them as ours or as anyone's, and we don't conceive of self or other. I think what it comes down to is that people are afraid of change and afraid of death. Having been born, they don't want to die. But is that logical? It's like pouring water into a glass but not wanting it to fill up. If you keep pouring the water, you can't expect it not to be full. But people are born and don't want to die. Think about it. If people are born but never die, will that bring happiness? If no one who comes into the world dies, things will be a lot worse. We would probably all end up eating excrement. Where would we all stay? It's like pouring water into the glass without ceasing, yet still not wanting it to be full. We really ought to think things through. If we really don't want to die, we should realize the deathless, as the Buddha taught. Do you know what the deathless means? Though you die, if you have wisdom realizing anatta, it's as if you don't die. Not dying, not being born, that's where things can be finished. Being born and wishing for happiness and enjoyment without dying is not at all the correct way. But that's what people want, so there is no end of suffering for them. True practitioners do not suffer. Ordinary practitioners still suffer because they haven't yet fulfilled the path of practice. They haven't realized the deathless, so they still suffer. They are still subject to death. Born of the womb, can we avoid death? Apart from realizing that there is no real self, there is no way to avoid death. I don't die. Sankhara undergo transformation following their nature. When others look at such a person and try to figure him out, they will probably see someone who's crazy. But this isn't just talking about a mad person. This is someone who is diligent. Such a person really knows what is useful in so many different ways. When an awakened being looks at ordinary worldly people, he will see them as ignorant, like little children. When worldly people consider an awakened being, they will think he's lost it. He doesn't have any interest in the things they live for. To put it another way, an arahant and an insane person are similar. When people look at an arahant, they'll think he's crazy. If you curse him, he doesn't care. Whatever you say to him, he doesn't react, like a crazy person, but crazy and having awareness. A truly insane person may not get angry when he's cursed, but that's because he doesn't know what's going on. Someone observing the arahant and the mad person might see them as the same. But the lowest is mad, living in a condition of intense self-cherishing, while the very highest is arahant, free of all ideas and of concern about a self. If you only look at their external manifestations, they seem similar, but their inner awareness, their sense of things, is very different. Think about this. When someone says something that ought to make you angry, and you just let it go, people might believe you're crazy. So when you teach others about these things, they don't understand very easily. It has to be internalized and experienced directly for them to really understand. So here is quite a different talk from Ajahn Sumedho from the book Don't Take Your Life Personally. And the title of this is Don't Be Afraid of Trusting Yourself. I'm on a sabbatical leave this year, which is quite a nice change. After being involved in teaching retreats and giving talks for 30 years or more, I asked for some time off, and now I am wondering if I ever want to go back to teaching again. Actually, sharing knowledge is a more accurate way of thinking about what I do, because I don't particularly like the idea of being a teacher and holding to that position. That would be like establishing the sense of, I'm the teacher and you're the student, and that for some people is never questioned. So one can easily get stuck into roles like that. With the practice of awareness, we get behind the conventions that we are conditioned by. As John Peacock was saying last night, our interpretation of Buddhism is conditioned by our cultural way of perceiving things. The interpretation of the words and even the English translations that we choose are influenced by our own conditioned mind. A Christian missionary will interpret Buddhism one way, and a psychologist or lawyer, say, will interpret it another. So we recognize that awareness is the ability you have to get to ground zero, to the point before you were conditioned, to the face before you were born, to the deathless before you were ever caught into a cultural or social conditioning process. What is pure awareness? Where is it? When most of us first start meditating, we come from a place of ignorance. I started with the thought, I am a confused person and I need to practice meditation in order to become enlightened. That was how I saw myself when I started meditating years ago. I saw myself in this critical way. I shouldn't be the way I am. I've got to be better than this by doing something that will make me better in the future. In some ways, on a conventional level, this was true. It wasn't that it was a totally false perception, but it was a perception. If we grasp such perceptions, they will influence how we experience what teachers say, how we read scriptures, and how we treat the religious conventions and techniques we use. In Thailand, I noticed that Westerners who ordain into the Thai system bring with them a strong sense of self. Thai culture is socially oriented. Its identity is on a very wide spectrum, and social relationships and sensitivities are very strong. Most of us don't have that. Our culture is quite different. Americans, anyway, are very individualistic. We demand our rights, stand up for ourselves, and assert ourselves, and on like that. You can see this on an international level as well. Now, I am not saying that this is wrong. I am merely pointing to how it affects conscious experience. Recognize also the strong sense of self-criticism and self-disparagement that is common in the Western world. We are very aware of what is wrong with us, of what is not right, the weaknesses, the faults and flaws. We often see ourselves through these perceptions of something wrong, and I'm not good enough the way I am. The Thai forest tradition has a strong disciplinary aspect to it, so Westerners tend to go into strict Vinaya monasteries with this sense of, I am a flawed and weak person and need to purify myself through keeping these rules. This, of course, has a certain effect. For one thing, by holding to rules or precepts that are given to us, we can easily become insensitive, because the sense of our self-worth depends on keeping these rules. If we cannot keep them according to the standard we have, we tend to feel worse than we did before. We feel we are not good monks, not worthy of the robe. As alms mendicants, we are dependent on the goodness of others, so we might find ourselves thinking, I'm not worthy of these alms, and get into states of self-loathing. This is a logical process, isn't it? If I am identified with being this physical body and this personality, and if I am very aware of what is wrong with these things, I might try to make myself into a better person by endlessly meditating and keeping the moral precepts. But then, if I find I can't live up to the standard I hold, an ideal standard of what I should be, I tend to have this sense of, see, I'm too weak, I'm not good enough. Living the holy life then can lead to an even greater lack of self-worth, and it all comes from the basic delusion, putting it in Theravada terms, that I am the five aggregates, Cunda, identifying with the five aspects of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. The Buddha used this five aggregates teaching as an expedient means, a convenient way of simplifying everything. If you begin to break yourself down into these five aspects or groups, these khandas, you start to question the assumption that I am this permanent personality, from which you see through very critical eyes. So how do we get behind this? What do we do? It is not a question of going into reverse and saying, I am good enough. I am the deathless. I am the Buddha. I am a wonderful guy. One could go into a kind of positive thinking mode. I'm totally wonderful and beautiful and lovable. That is better than doing the reverse, I think, because you might at least have a few happy moments out of that. But the problem is not with thoughts or perceptions as such. It is with the way we hold to thoughts and perceptions, the way we identify with them and cling to them. If I have the fixed perception that I am a flawed person and am not good enough the way I am, if that is the assumption I make about myself, it tends to influence how I relate to the world, to other people, to monasticism, and everything. At one time, I developed a kind of skillful means and intentionally thought, I am not good enough the way I am. But instead of analyzing this statement, I just reflected on it, just became aware of it. If you learn how to listen to yourself, to listen to your thoughts when you think, I am not good enough the way I am, for example, you will begin to realize that this is actually just something you're creating in your mind. There is that which is aware of thought, and there is the perception that you create, and you begin to separate the two. So the awareness is the focus, and this is the emphasis the Buddha made. Our ability in this present moment is to be awake and fully with the way it is, to be awake to how things around us are affecting us through sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Explore this sense of I am this physical body. This is me. If we begin to listen to this sense of my body, what I look like, and become aware of the way we see ourselves, attractive or unattractive, male or female, and so on, we realize that these are perceptions we create. We identify strongly just on the level of gender, for example. The I'm a man and you're a woman kind of thing seems obvious, just common sense. The body is either male or female. That is the nature of the body. But is this body what I really am? I encourage you to explore what this body is. It has a momentum all its own. It is born, grows up, gets old, and dies. And no matter how hard we try to prevent it from getting ill and old, it still does it, doesn't it? And then there is the inevitable death of the body. I can say to myself, don't get old, Sumedho. I can say that, but the body doesn't obey. It doesn't obey because it isn't me. So it is like telling a leaf not to wither and fall off a tree. I can't do that. It is beyond my ability. So then I realize it is foolish to identify, to cling, to hold to the five aggregates as some kind of personal possession. And if I really explore them, I see that they are conditions in nature. They follow nature's laws. They are what they are. Sometimes they are very pleasant, and sometimes they are horrible. That is the way nature is, good and bad, right and wrong. The point to see is that this world, the conditioned realm that we are experiencing, is like this. As you observe, as you listen to this sense of I am, just on a very personal level, I am not good enough, for example, you begin to notice the effect it has on your consciousness. When you hold to a view like that, you begin to notice a sense of depression, embarrassment, or timidity, because that is the result, that is the emotional result of holding to, I'm not good enough the way I am. Now this is not an analytical process, this is awareness. As I said before, it is not a question of trying to change the attitude you have towards yourself, but of getting behind any attitude you have, seeing it as a viewpoint, seeing it as something you assume or believe. Pure awareness is not dependent on what you are thinking, your physical condition, your emotional state, or the conditioned realm, because it is what you can always refer to or be. You can always be the awareness, no matter what the conditions are, externally or internally. We have to really apply ourselves. However, really be fearless in our investigations, because there are a lot of subtle assumptions and things we might be very attached to, things we might not yet be ready to let go of. So just trust yourself in letting go of the things you can let go of in the present. I'm not saying you should let go of everything during this summer school, and that by the time you leave here, I want you to be completely free from all attachments. That would be asking the impossible. I am encouraging you rather to have more confidence in your recognition of attachment, not as a judgment against it, but in order to realize what it is like, to see that it is wanting things to be what they cannot be, or holding to views and having to defend your views, maybe feeling threatened when your views are challenged. Now, just as an experiment, we can sit for a while and try to make whatever comes into the mind fully conscious. Excuse me. Happiness, sadness, uncertainty, confusion, inspiration, depression. It doesn't matter what the condition is. Just listen to it. Just let it be what it is, and recognize that your relationship to it now is listening, not judging. You are not trying to pass any kind of value judgment about anything, but just noticing, allowing even something unpleasant to be fully accepted in this conscious moment. Make a special note of the listening and the object you are listening to. Listening inwardly to your thoughts, for example. Just notice the thoughts move and change. You can't sustain a thought, can you? You cannot keep one thought, but you can be aware of its movement. This is separating the subject from the object by being the subject. Be the witness, the knower, and then the known is, say, thinking or feeling. Thinking is cultural conditioning. We are conditioned to think about things. We are also sensitive and have feeling. We can feel lonely or sad or confused, and there is knowing these things, isn't there? You might think, I'm feeling sad today, and there is an awareness of the feeling, what it is like, and also that it changes. So there is that which is aware, and there's the object you're aware of. If you grasp the object, you become someone who is sad. Say, that is what we call becoming. If somebody says something and makes you angry, angry feelings arise. Then if you grasp those feelings, you become an angry person and might act on it. You could blow it, in other words, and start yelling, saying unkind things, and even getting physically violent because of becoming. The point is to know the difference between the objects and the awareness of them. The 5 aggregates are objects. That is putting that which is aware into the context of, say, Buddha or the Buddha, the knowing, the awakened state. This sense of awakening is very significant. This is a wake-up teaching. We think we are awake because our eyes are open and we are not lying down sleeping, but we might still be completely lost in the delusion and living in the realm of assumptions and habits. The Buddha, the awakened one, woke up to this. It is not a question of saying, I shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be ignorant, and I shouldn't be angry. That is making it into a personal judgment and getting stuck in the same realm again. We know we shouldn't be like that. Our social values tell us we should conquer anger and lust and comply with all other shoulds. We all know what we should do. That is not the point, is it? The point is to be aware of the way it actually is. This is where I encourage you to trust yourself, and it is like an intuitive function. You can't get at it. You can't really say, this is it, and hold it in your hand. It is something you have to trust within yourself. It is your awakenedness. What is it for when you are awake? It's no good asking me what it is like for you, or asking me whether you are awake or not. Ajahn Sumedho. Am I awake? It isn't for me to know that. It is for you to know it. That is where the teacher-student thing can get in the way, because students empower the teacher. Ajahn Sumedho knows what's good for me. I'm so stupid and hopeless. I'm a clumsy person and I've done a lot of foolish things in my life, but Ajahn Sumedho knows what I need. Then I say, yeah, you've lived a pretty stupid life and you should never trust yourself. I know what's good for you. That would be reinforcing the assumption that I am the expert and you are the student. It isn't a matter of assuming the opposite either. I'm just as good as Ajahn Sumedho, you know. With meditation, you are getting beyond that. You are learning to trust in your own intuitive sense, in the awakenedness of your own mind, and really making that a fully conscious experience. It is not just some idea in your brain, but something you really know and trust. At first, maybe your own intuitive sense doesn't seem all that trustworthy because there is nothing you can get a hold of in the way you want to. This is where I encourage you to trust more in your direct experience than in ideas you have from the tradition. No matter how good things might be, as long as you grasp them, you are trying to interpret life from somebody else's point of view. We can easily get intimidated by what others think and say, or what we feel the world expects of us. We can become very frightened by that and mistrust ourselves. And in our materialistic society, I have noticed, we can appear quite confident, but are not. We can give the impression of being an authority and an expert just by knowing a lot of things. I know all about Theravada Buddhism. I am an expert. And yet, if we never practice, the confidence fails when it gets to the realities of life, to the emotional stress, the loss of loved ones, the disappointments. All of these things are part of the human experience, and no matter how expert we are on the teachings of the Pali Canon, if we have not really applied those teachings in our lives and learned how to trust in our own intuitive sense, then they won't help very much when the going gets tough. And just to say to somebody that it is all impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, somehow sounds like an empty statement when that person's life has got difficult, when he has lost his job, his wife has died, and his electricity has been cut off. Just to say, well, everything's impermanent, sounds a bit hollow. During this summer school, then, I encourage you to really listen inwardly. If you are unhappy, full of doubts, low, bored, or maybe feeling elated, rather than trying to suppress it or just endlessly tell people about it, listen to it. I am bored. I'm bored. You can then begin to get in touch with boredom. You can accept it in a way. It's not a matter of trying to figure out why you're bored or blaming it on somebody else. I am bored because of him. I'm bored because of the summer school. Just use the boredom to open to it, to understand boredom, to recognize it. And if somebody says something that offends or upsets you, use that to learn from. When we start analyzing, it gets back into the same problem of, why do I get so upset when you do that? We might think about it and try to figure it out. And it is interesting sometimes to do that, but it doesn't solve the problem. At least not until we learn how to recognize that being upset is like this. Feeling lonely is like this. But that which is aware, is that lonely? Is awareness lonely? Or is it the object of awareness that is lonely? Investigate that relationship. Fear is another important aspect of our lives to contemplate, isn't it? It is a basic human emotion. This realm that we live in is a realm of fear. We can create institutions to give us a sense of security, but the animal world is all about survival. It is the law of the jungle, where we look for ourselves, look after ourselves, where we learn the tricks of survival. It is a frightening realm to be born into, but that is just the way it is. We can think how it should be. The lion and the lamb should lie down together and love each other, but that is an ideal realm. We can create an image of an ideal, but this realm is not actually like that. Lambs and lions don't do that, nor are they supposed to. So it isn't their fault either. We are recognizing the way it is on the level of just raw conditioning, where we have to survive, have to give birth, procreate, raise families, eat, protect our things. All these are part of this human realm that we are experiencing, and there is a lot of fear in it in terms of pain and loss. But that is the way the realm of fear is. Here in Britain, we have a sense of security. As much as people complain, this is a fairly well-run country. You can take a lot for granted living here that you can't in other countries, but then little things can jar you. You want it to be perfect. You want it to be how it should be if it were a really well-run country and all the people were doing what they should do. You would like that, but that is not the way it is. And noticing the way it is isn't excusing it or apologizing. It is just recognizing that this realm and this physical body are the way they are at this moment. Whether you feel healthy and strong, weak and sickly or whatever, it is not the point, is it? The point is to willingly accept the way it is, to recognize it, even if it is not the way you want it to be, rather than being caught up in abusing society or your body or the world you are living in because you feel threatened and persecuted by them. Now that which is awake and aware can be aware of your own body, but your body cannot be aware of you. You can recognize just by the body sweeping practice, just by sweeping through the sensations in this body, that you can be aware of the body as an experience right now. As you sit here, you can be aware of the posture of sitting, of the pressure of sitting, of the heat and cold of all sensations. That which is aware can include the whole body in this moment. It isn't like thinking. When you think and analyze, you have one thought at a time. You have to think this one thought, then the next one, then the next one, and you can't think two thoughts at the same time. Also, when you are attached to thinking, you are caught in this time realm. Thinking is quite a gift, actually, but your thoughts can easily delude you because they are limited. They are linear and dualistic. Nevertheless, you can be aware of thinking, and you can deliberately think, I am not good enough the way I am, or whatever. So what is it that is aware of thinking? Keep asking yourself, what is it that is aware of thinking? What is it that is aware of feeling? What is it that is aware of sadness, anger, lust, despair, or anything? What is it that is aware? It isn't a matter of coming up with some smart aleck answer, but of just trusting yourself to keep that kind of question floating in your consciousness so that you can begin to feel the connection, begin to get the sense of being this awareness, this pure subjectivity, where the physical body is an object and no longer the subject, where you are no longer operating from the assumption that I am this physical body or I am this personality, where you are actually in the space that contains all of this. This is my own experience and interpretation of what I call the deathless. I am aware of what changes, what is death-bound, such as thoughts. Thoughts are born and die incessantly. Thinking moves very quickly, as well as feeling, emotion, states of mind, physical sensations, pleasure, pain, aches, and so on. What is it then that is aware of them? What is it that is awake? Just by repeating that question, you are listening to the questioning as well as learning to trust in the simple act of paying attention. The question helps to encourage this attentiveness. It is not a matter of looking for an answer in the normal way. It is simply questioning in order to develop more confidence in your own receptivity, in your own awakenedness. This awakenedness is natural. It is not a condition you create through meditation practice. It is a natural state of being and sustains itself as you begin to trust in it. That is why I keep reiterating this word, trust. Your thinking mind endlessly creates doubts about it. At least mine used to. I would think, it couldn't be this simple. It takes years for even meditation masters to get enlightened, and is said to be rare for anyone. You read the scriptural accounts and Dhamma books and think, I don't imagine anyone like me could ever do that. You hear about the miraculous side of it, the great teachers that read minds and levitate. I know I will never be able to do that. Would like to, though. Recognize the limitation even of the convention we are using. The scriptures and commentaries and the words of the great teachers, these are often taken out of context anyway. Ajahn Mahabua wrote a biography about Ajahn Mun that makes him sound like a superhuman. It is a very entertaining book, and you cannot help but be impressed. But when you talk to disciples of Ajahn Mun, they say, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. Just forget it. Ajahn Mun taught about waking up, being aware. The other stuff is impressive and entertaining and may inspire you, but recognize its limitation and trust in your intuitive sense. What is important? For you to communicate with all the realms in the universe and talk to the devas in the heavenly realms, to be connected physically to the arhants in the Himalayas, or to be awake and aware in this moment, in this mundane, sitting, standing, walking, lying down moment where you are washing the dishes or vacuuming the carpet. When I reflect in this way, I recognize that awareness is more important than trying to make myself into an extraordinary super magician. I realize that that is not worth trying for. It is not what I want. Test it out. See for yourself through your own intuitive intelligence. There is suffering, dukkha. and there is non-suffering. By just taking these two, by just exploring the unsatisfactoriness, you can make a point of becoming aware of, say, waking up in the morning and feeling a sense of dreariness or even dread. Maybe there is something in the day you don't particularly want to face. Maybe there is a feeling of restlessness, of wanting something to do, of loneliness, of wanting somebody to talk to, of wanting some distraction. Things like this are just ordinary in anybody's life, and that awareness allows us to observe this, to know it is like this. The more I trust in awareness, the more my relationship to the conditions that arise in my mind change. Instead of being pulled into conditions of trying to suppress them or get rid of them, I acknowledge them, recognize them, and don't make a problem out of them. That leads much more to a sense of being content and peaceful with life. I don't feel, oh, there's so much I have to do. We create problems for ourselves when we say, I've got an anger problem. I suffer from jealousy. I have a lot of fear. I carry resentments. We assume from these identities that we shouldn't have these feelings. We think, I shouldn't be an angry person. I've got to do something about it. But if we listen to it, rather than just believe it, do we find that that which is aware of anger is angry? Assuming you are really angry right now, really angry, and you are aware that there is anger, is the awareness angry? The anger is what you are feeling. It's like this. But your awareness, is that angry? That is the way I investigate that particular experience. And the more I investigate it, the more I see that awareness is not angry. Awareness is aware of anger, but it is not itself anger. I trust in the awareness more and more. I rest in it rather than make a problem about feeling angry. If I take it personally, then I start thinking, a good monk shouldn't be like this. I should have loving kindness for people. And then somebody does something that makes me really angry, and I try to have metta for him. That's what I should do, I tell myself. I should forgive him. The point is, I know what I should do, but really, I am very angry, and I have absolutely no metta for that person. I would actually like to punch that person on the nose. But that which is aware of the anger, is that anger? Is that greed? Is that frightened or confused? As you question, just trust more and more in the awareness. This is an intuitive practice. This is where you have to trust yourself. You are the one that has to do this. Nobody can do it for you. Don't be frightened of trusting yourself. Don't trust your opinions and views. Don't trust your views about Buddhism or Christianity or anything. I don't trust any of those things. I can still have viewpoints and opinions, but I don't trust them. That is not where my refuge is. I do, however, trust this awareness. As you keep developing this, it gets stronger through your life experiences. This is not just an airy-fairy kind of idealism. It is something that, as you grow older, gives you increasingly more strength in dealing with the problems of this realm, in living in a human body, in society. This is the way it is. It isn't what it should be, but it is just the way it is. Notice that. At various fleeting moments, you might have the sense that life is just as it shouldn't be, or life is just as it should be, but you can't sustain that. Those are beautiful words spoken by Ajahn Sumedho. That you might have heard me say summer school a couple of times. This series of talks, it's a large number of talks, was given, I believe, over a several-month period. And the summer school is, it's like a traditional function or a traditional kind of thing that's done in this particular place in England. And they just arrange. It's like a forum, and they arrange for a number of speakers, and I think people come to these events. So this year it's called the Leicester Summer School, and so he was giving like 1 or 2 talks a day, and it's a spiritual event. They're putting on. I think some years it's Buddhism, other years it's different religions. So. Okay. Have a good morning.